I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. On today's video, we're going to take a look at some sounds inspired by classic Boss effects pedals. If you play the electric guitar and you haven't come across a Boss pedal at some point, I would actually find that very hard to believe because they are pretty much everywhere. Nearly every pedal board, pedal collection, and guitar store stocks Boss pedals of some sort. And they have so many classic pedals, from their overdrive pedals and distortion pedals like the DS1, OD1, and SD1, through to classic chorus effects like the CE series and the Dimension, as well as delay effects, both analog and digital, like the DM2, the DD series, and then the newer SDE 3 and 3000 pedals. What I want to do here is just walk you through some of my favorite sounds that I've actually matched to real pedals, some of them modern production pedals, some of them vintage and desirable pedals. Before we do though, I've got a PRS DGT plugged straight into the Axe FX3. I'm on the new firmware 27. We're using the Jazz 120 amp model. So this is a model of the Roland JC 120, renowned for its sparkling clean sounds. I've matched this up with some of these Rumble Dynacabs in here, which I just really like for clean sounds, and a bit of the large room reverb. To get started, we're going to hear what I've called this blue chorus scene on here. It's going to use the analog mono chorus. This has been matched to a vintage Boss CE1 pedal in here. I think it actually sounds quite close to the existing Japan CE2 mode we have in here, but you know, a real CE1 commands a hefty price tag these days, so I thought it would be cool to include it in here as a scene. Let's hear the clean sound, and then with the chorus. It's pretty delightful. That's everything a good chorus should be right there. Let's move on to the second scene. This is going to use the DM2 delay type in here. I've called it pink delay because the real DM2 is a little pink colored delay pedal with 3 different knobs on there. It had a maximum delay time of 300 milliseconds. So that's what I've plugged in here, and I've placed it before the amp. This makes a great little rhythmic delay. If you wanted more of a classic slapback, turn the time down to say around 70 or 80 milliseconds. But for now, we get this. I love the way the repeats degrade on there. They get darker and darker, and that mimics the behavior of the real world pedal. Now, you can get self-oscillation with this if you crank the feedback and master feedback up on here and then turn the delay time down. You could attach an expression pedal to the delay time and do that and get some crazy ambient effects. The third scene on here I've called white delay, and I've matched these settings to an old Boss DD2 that I have in here. So I've done a little bit of wrangling with the EQ in here. There's no modulation, but you can add some if you want some on there. There's also a little bit of drive coming from this section over here. But again, 300 milliseconds of delay. This one has a much brighter percussive character. With a really short delay time in there, you get an almost kind of faux reverb sound, like you've been locked in a very small tiled room or something like that. So 2 really fun delay sounds and a chorus sound to start. Maybe my favorite Boss modulation effect, though, is the BF2 flanger. I actually just bought a vintage BF2 flanger. I like it that much, but I've matched the settings here using the BBF2, so the Boss BF2 flanger, kind of to my favorite settings on the pedal, which are basically two of the controls at 11 o'clock and the other two at 1 o'clock on there. Let's hear this. That flanger, when stacked with the DM2 delay and our chorus settings from before, can give you some really lovely 80s new wave and post-punk kind of sounds as well. Absolute Boss classic is the SD1 Super Overdrive. You turn the drive down, the level and the tone up, and it's an amazing boost into a crunchy amp. I've got the Super OD model set up like that, and we're running it into the Brit 800 2203 high. Another classic is the Orange Boss DS1 Distortion. Cranking up the distortion and running it into a clean amp can give you a real grunge style tone, or turning the distortion down and running it into a crunchy amp can really thicken your tone up for leads. I'll let you hear both of them, starting out with the clean version. You can certainly see why players like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai enjoy the DS1 as a thickening agent on their leads, and running it into a clean amp. For me, that reminds me of being 14 years old, trying one of those pedals for the first time through a tiny little amp, and at the time thinking it was the greatest sound ever. It may not be the greatest sound ever, but it was very important, I think, for a lot of us as developing players. And, you know, for such a cheap pedal in the real world, it's got so many uses on there. It is an absolute classic. Now, something that is a little rarer and harder to get is the original Boss Dimension C pedal, and even rarer still, and probably more unobtainable for a lot of us guitar players, the Roland Dimension D rack. Well, there's the Dimension Chorus in here, and I have been lucky enough to measure an original Dimension C pedal, and these are matched to mode 3 on there. I've also used the pedal compressor 2 on here with the compression crank, trying to mimic, say, a Boss CS series comp on there. Back on the clean sound, this just makes your clean sound so wide and lush. It doesn't sound like a traditional wobbly chorus either. And with the mix a little lower, this is a great way to add some girth and width to your dirty tones. And then finally, some settings based on the newest Boss pedal that's just come out, the little SDE3, mimicking the sound of the old Roland SDE 3000 rack delay. Players like Eddie Van Halen would use 2 of these delays in parallel for a dual delay sound. These dual delay settings here mimic those settings. I've actually matched them to the pedal and they sound incredibly close. Furthermore, I'm boosting the amp with some settings inspired by the Boss GE7 EQ pedal. So basically just boosting the mids, cutting a little bit of the extreme lows and extreme highs on there. Again, this one is just so indulgent and enjoyable. Now, a company like Boss has made a lot of pedals over the years. Almost every effect type that you can think of, they probably have at least 2 pedals in that range. So I'd encourage you to dig into the effect types in all the different blocks and see what you can dig up. It is so fun having these authentic models of real world effects, but then the fractal ecosystem lets us go so much further than the limitations those pedals provide if we want to. And for things like the Dimension Chorus, the little Dimension C pedal can't really handle being in the effects loop of an amp, whereas we can place it after the amp and cab here and it sounds just fine. Furthermore, we could stack multiple examples on there without having to worry about powering them or having to deal with things like signal bleed from, say, the SD1 or multiple buffers. It is so easy in here. So I'll put the preset in the video description. Go and grab it and make some noise with it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I will see you next week for another Tuesday Tone Tip.